Sebby, I'm looking at that clock, so when do you want me to wrap up? You said about 45 minutes, so I'll go around.
Yeah, I mean, usually around 12.
Okay, I'll make sure to be done
Okay.
by then. Because I could just talk all day. Thank you all so much for letting me be here. To be completely honest, this is the 4th or 5th time I've ever been in a place of worship. And this was quite a delightful surprise. You all hold a wonderful space here, and it's felt in the walls, so thank you for that. But I talk on a lot of different subjects in a lot of different places, and rarely do I get to talk about religion because it's not polite conversation anymore. But I thought if you would indulge me, that this would be the perfect opportunity and place to do that. Because I have a long history with religion. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was brought up, my father was Jewish and my mother was Catholic, and I was a large family, and they decided they were going to let us all decide for ourselves. I remember being young and wishing that I could have just been given a religion like the rest of the kids, and I could have been given some direction and known where to go. As an adult, I am so grateful that I was let to be a third-party observer to the indoctrinations of young children in the world, to, spiritual tales that may or may not. It's interesting the things that are put upon us by adults in good faith and with good reasons, but that we then, as we grow up, have to take off like hats or clothing that doesn't fit us anymore. And it's odd that in this culture, that's not really, as widely accepted as I believe. Religion is all pervasive in American culture at very least, and I think that it's time that it needs to update with the times and evolve a little, and it seems like y'all are doing that here, so that's really encouraging to see. I didn't know that was happening in places of worship today. Because I believe that God is larger than any words or ideologies that we as humans could possibly put to it. That the idea that God is all that there is, and so for us to say one way is the only way or something is right or wrong, I think dilutes the largeness of the truly all-expansiveness of what God really is. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the book Conversations with God. Was a wonderful one that I really enjoyed, and that really put that to me in a way that I could understand for the first time. I had never really thought about it before, as that God is all of it. Every bit. And then that means each of us as individuals are a part of that whole. That each of us is a piece of God in that way. And that was a way that I could digest it a little bit more. I think when I was younger, I was angry not at God, but at the representations that people put to me of him. For being who I was, other young children telling me that I was going to hell, didn't seem very much in line with the God that I was growing to understand. But I digress. I think my search for God happened unintentionally. When I was young, I was very depressed, and when I was 21, I decided that I was going to change. I was going to work harder to find happiness. That I knew that I could keep taking antidepressants and I could keep going in the path that I was, but I decided I was going to work harder to figure out how to take care of myself instead of putting it off to doctors to tell me how to do that. And so that started a 10-year journey of just delving into all sorts of things that I see represented here in this room. And so while finding happiness, it put me on a path to spirituality that I didn't realize would lead me to being any form of a religious person that I am currently becoming. That was a surprise to the journey. That journey took me across the country and back again, and I thoroughly enjoyed every bit of it. It taught me things like faith and grace, trusting and believing, etc. I think faith was probably one of the first places that I started. I had never understood faith as anything other than a religious context word. And so when someone first told me to start having faith in myself, it had all sorts of connotations attached to it that, made me be like, well, that's not the path for me. But when I took the word away from the religions and just dealt with the idea of faith, gosh, what a beautiful concept when we can apply it inwardly and then therefore outwardly. So through grace and through faith, I learned to start believing in myself. And I guess belief was a really big part of it too. We're told to believe in ourselves and that we can be anything we want to be. And then as we get older, that gets more and more limited. And so we end up with limited beliefs. And so we all have beliefs. Every single one of us believes things about ourselves, about the world, and that makes up our perception of existence. But those are flawed. Belief and truth are not the same. And so where truth is true regardless of human perception, belief is very individual and has been either, I think, mostly given to us. I think it's rare that someone might come to a belief all on their own. I think it's stuff that's been handed down, and then we go, oh yes, that's what I believe, until that belief is tested. And then we either continue on in that way or we believe something new. But beliefs are ingrained in us in such a way that we defend them like our physical body. We physiologically react when someone is attacking our belief in the same way, like our brain doesn't know the difference, as someone physically attacking you. And so it's why we can tend to put up walls when something doesn't mesh with what we personally believe. However, that's the only way that religion or society can ever grow, is if we look at those beliefs a little closer and figure out who gave them to us and where they came from and what they really mean to us. We can believe all sorts of things. I think in American culture, we believe a lot of things like, I'm not enough or I'm not worthy. I mean, there's a lot of beliefs that are religious, but the things we believe about ourselves, I think, are more often than not positive. I'd like that to change. That's something that I had to learn myself. And I learned it through different avenues like the law of attraction and Abraham Hicks, and there's a lot of different things that go into it. But generally the idea that you get to choose your beliefs and that it all starts with thoughts and that thoughts create our reality. It's old knowledge that's being brought around in a new way. Someone called it fake it till you make it, and it worked for me. Because it's just changing your thoughts. And when you change your thoughts, you change your actions. And when you change your actions, you change your beliefs. Not to change anybody else, though. It's all about the individual. I think it only gets tricky when you try to affect other people or other situations or anything outside of yourself. The only thing that you can change is you. I know that the only thing that I can change is me. And I appreciate these opportunities to get to talk about it. But I'm not trying to force anybody to do it the way that I did it or to even take, my story as truth, because that's incredibly personal. But religion has made it, a personal thing for me. It's always been something that I get very emotional talking about it because of the fact that it's saying, or that most mainstream religions are saying, that there's only one way, and there's only one truth, and there's only one way to get to God. But I believe that we're all already a part and a piece of God, and we're all already connected to that, and it's, I think, dangerous logic to say that you can only do it this one way. I think, goodness gracious, a creator would be so much larger than to only have one solution. So that's always just been really outlandish to me. It's crazy how factually based it can be because people are indoctrinated at a young age, and it perpetuates on that we can accept those things as truth when they're really quite limiting in the things that they themselves believe. It's all about our words, though. We only have so many words to say so many things, and it's the best that we can do. The only way that anybody can connect with anybody else is through speaking. And so I can talk about, a purple elephant, and maybe now you can see a purple elephant, but I put that there. That's almost a magic trick. Words are the connector piece, and so it makes sense to me that 2018 years ago, that they were just working with the best tools that they had. Hence that we have, patriarchal pronouns that are easy to use for, an all encompassing being, but are limiting and dangerous. When it's more than he or she or it or so I've been calling it the is just because I haven't come up with a better thing, but I'm not going to push that on anyone else. Words are evolving. We're coming up with more nuances to speak about things, and so I hope that religion can evolve too, because at the end of the day, it was supposed to be about love. We've always been storytellers as a species. That's what we do best. It's interesting that we won survival of the fittest, if that's a theory that we're going with. But here we are still trying to figure out how to talk about it. But we've always told stories. But we didn't tell stories I'm sure it was to entertain each other and to pass the time. But it was mostly to pass on really important information, because, say, back before we had the written word, stories would have to be told on to pass on, pertinent stuff. And that was done through the morals of the stories. It wasn't about the details or who did what, when, or with who, or why. It was the moral of the story, which is why they told the stories over and over and over again. It's odd to me that in this one case, we've forgotten that, and we've missed the forest for the trees? I, as a later religious person, understand, that the Bible is a good book and has great morals. But gosh, it's crazy how many people have had to die in religious wars based over the semantics and the details of a story from long ago. So I used to be really, malcontented with those sorts of books. But then when I really delved into them more, I realized that, gosh, my philosophy that I was just naturally coming to on my own was very much in line with, everything that Jesus was saying. And not just him, but other disciples as well. That when it came to, the meat of it, I think we all agree. But it gets lost in the details of when and why, and goodness gracious, I believe now that I don't think a God would want us to, the manifest destiny version of history that has happened, I think needs to stop, and that only comes when people can let go of the details of the story for the moral, because the moral was love, always. Love your neighbor, just countless things about believing in yourself. So many of the things that were preached are not, it's interesting to me that the things that I don't think are important are continued on. But they're really important nuggets that the story was supposed to tell you. People don't seem to take as much stock in. The fact that you could heal yourself with faith the size of a mustard seed. People don't really take that. They're like, oh, well, that's just allegory. That's just a story. Well, that's odd that you'd say that about the parts that can help your life, but everything else is real serious and tight about it. The things that I have taken away from it is that, Jesus as a Messiah, let's go with that story, was trying to show us the way, show us a way, but not to say that he was the only way. I think if you listen to his words, he was endlessly saying that you're the way, that you will do greater things than I have. And that with faith the size of a mustard seed, you can heal yourself. Whenever anybody came to him and said, oh my gosh, look at you healing people, he never took credit. He always said, I didn't do that. I just let you know that you can. It's odd to me that 2,000 years later, we are still worshiping a man who I don't think wanted to be worshipped. I think he wanted us to see ourselves in him. I get guff when I talk about this, and I get nervous sometimes because it can be taken the wrong way in some groups, but they talk about the second coming endlessly, and I believe it's happening now, and I believe it's happening in each individual. And there's things in the Bible that seem to, you can prove any sort of point in any sort of way with words from the Bible, so I didn't bring any with me. Because, that's an endless journey we could spend a lifetime with.
I think we might have one back there.
Oh my God, probably a good one too. To say that he wanted us to see how powerful we were ourselves. I was told one time that, it has been translated and retranslated and translated so many times that small words might have gotten lost. Someone made a point once that I saw that said the word the and the word a were really similar. And so it's possible that the Son of God was at one point a Son of God. But of course it got translated to be the, because that makes a lot more, compelling story, I suppose. But what a difference that one word would make if we read that whole book knowing that he was a Son of God and that we are all the sons and daughters of God, which it also says. But the fact that we would put him on a pedestal, which I don't think he ever asked for, and I think would be quite discontented if he knew to the lengths that people went to forego their own responsibility to put it all upon him. A man that lived 2,000 years ago, And I have my own feelings about, and I'm developing my own relationship with him as a spirit and as an ideology. But to say that I believe that he wanted us to believe in ourselves. And that's why that religion is so all-pervasive in our culture, is because it has a great meat to it. It has a great moral. But let's not get lost in the forest looking at all the trees. And goodness gracious, the lengths that it has divided us. Of course, it's just one more way in which structures are set up to separate us so that, I think if we all knew how powerful we were, a lot of systems would have to fall away because we wouldn't need them. Our collective belief in those things is what perpetuates it on. We all, like for instance, I talked to somebody about the most all-encompassing religion that everybody, pretty much, 99% of the world, I would say, believes in is money. Money could be a religion, a system, because it doesn't actually exist. It's a piece of cloth that we all agree has value, but it doesn't in itself have any value. But we all believe it does, and we all agree that it does, so it does. But that's so interesting to me because it actually doesn't. But our collective creation has made it so, oh my gosh, like people, they really need it. They think they really need it. But that only because we all agreed that we do at some point in time. And of course, it was a system that was necessary to get to where we are now. But these systems have been stagnant and status quo for a while. Money was a tool to get us here. Religion was a tool. School systems were a tool. Healthcare is a tool. And at some point, we stopped growing those processes and just kind of kept trying to get them to go on as they are. I used to think that there had to be something like a whole start over, like a new beginning sort of deal to get back on the right track. I think we've always been on the right track. I think that we just have to continue the evolution, not only in ourselves, which is the only place we can really do it, but then thereby demanding them in the systems that we take part of. I know that's going to take time and patience, but I'm seeing it in little ways. I find that it's always paradoxical. The truths that I come to are never the ones that you think they're going to be. If you want to receive, you have to let go, or, that they're always usually the opposite of what you thought. So we can think ourselves into a hole going, well, how can we change the system? Gosh, I bet you it's something like so innocuous, like when we're all more vulnerable, then the systems will just break open and find new ways. It's not going to be this going this particular direction that we think so. It's sometimes when we step back and we come to our center that a new doorway opens up that we weren't even aware of, collectively more than individually. Right now we're at the individual part. I think I'm very passionate right now about the fact that each one of us has the power to heal ourselves if we can be aware of the beliefs that we're perpetuating in our heads and then do something about it. Early on, when I was aware of my depression, I called it countering, where I would first be aware of what I was thinking about myself and then do something different about it. Not to change all at once, because that's terrifying. I mean, and you got a really good, if you lived a long life, you've gotten really good at teaching yourselves these things daily. But, I don't know, something I might have said back then over and over in my head was that, nobody loves me, or, I'm not likable. And so I'd be aware, and I'd stop, and I'd say, actually, this person likes me, and I know that for a fact. Or if it was like, I'm not good enough or something, I'd go, actually, I am, and here's an example. That was all the difference to slowly, after a few years, work my way into I had been, riding this train of negativity in one direction, and it took some time to stop that train and grind its gears to go the other way. But I feel like I'm a very positive person now, and that's been through hard work and mental discipline that I've gotten there. And so it's bled over into other parts of my lives. When I first started learning about things like faith in myself, or trusting and believing in myself, or finding grace, I didn't know that it was going to lead me to a closer relationship to the all that there is, but gosh, it certainly worked that way. I think when I started this journey 10 years ago, I was a very hopeless and agnostic person. And I still don't claim to have all the answers, but that's because I believe that no human does, not a one, no matter what they say, nobody's got it all figured out. Which is something I'm teaching children now, because gosh, I didn't know that till I was like 22. I thought you got to a point when you're an adult and you knew everything. And I wish I had known that wasn't true earlier. That was quite a thing to learn. But that it brings it all back to when we know that we're a part of God in that way, and that we know that we can heal ourselves by being aware of our own internal experience, then it gives us back of our own a sense of personal responsibility. I have a personal responsibility to heal myself. I do that because I want to be the change I wish to see in the world. But regardless, I think that that's a valiant thing to do, because why wouldn't you? If you can do something about your own situation by going internal and figuring it out, like why wouldn't that be worth spending time doing? But that the next step is that brings a lot of personal responsibility, which religion and politics take away from us. Religion has always been about give it all to God, give it all to Jesus. And that's well and good, but then then that's just giving your power away, literally, for somebody else to deal with it. Give it to the politicians, they'll deal with it. Well, obviously not very well, in my personal opinion. So that's scary to people. I think for a long time we didn't want responsibility. We just want to be comfortable and drive your car to work and go home and watch TV and do what you want to do and drink a beer and call it a day. It's a lot of responsibility to have personal responsibility. But I think that's part of what this second coming, as I see it, requires of us. It doesn't require, because there's no shoulds, but I don't know, what's a good word? Inspires in us. It's a challenge that we can step up to if we'd like, to take back your own power and to be the change you wish to see in the world inside yourself. I believe that that's what Jesus wanted. He wanted us to see us the way we see him. I'm really glad you guys don't have a crucifix in here, because that's something that was always a thing to me. I would go in churches when my friends would let me go with, and they never let me eat the wafers or whatever. But that was always, I was a little kid. I really wanted the wafers. But I always remember asking. I said, why do you worship the Jesus on the cross? Wasn't the miracle the resurrection? Why wouldn't you have a statue of him rising from the dead? And I've gotten lots of different answers from lots of different pastors and lots of different religious people, but none of them were satisfying to me. I still believe that that's where we were. That's the story we have been telling ourselves for a long time, is the story of the crucifixion. I think we're all at a point where we need to start telling the story of the resurrection. Even within ourselves, that's an old story. The patriarchal story is old. The ways things were old. If we keep telling that story, we're going to keep living in the same story. But if as individuals we started telling a new story, instead of how we're not worthy, but how we're full of worth for ourselves, regardless of whether a God or any other person gave that to us, then we can start making just tiny ripple waves that I believe are reflected and rippled out all across the world. I see it happening. It's hard. I can tell you endless stories, but I know that once you step on that path, the synchronicities and the awareness to how that validation or association really just takes off. And so for me, that's my religious experience, is that when I stepped down this path that little signs are showing themselves to me that this is where I'm supposed to be, and this is what I'm supposed to be doing, is talking in front of people about how I found God in the woods when I wasn't looking for him. Because at the end of the day, all of the religions have in common, all of them, love. I don't think there's one that doesn't at some point talk about doing unto others as you'd have done to yourself, and about loving all the people of the world. How did we get here? How did we get so off track on a basis that started out with the idea of just loving each other? So that might be a little far-fetched for some people right now, but can we start with loving ourselves? Is that something that we can do? Is start saying nice things to ourselves? It's like these tiny little ways that wouldn't seem like they would grow to be, I don't know, who knows what it's going to be one a day. But, I mean, if I can leave you guys with anything, it's that you're all really powerful, wonderful, worthy individuals. One of the books that I'm reading right now that I really love is by Louise Hayes, Heal Your Life Now. It's a good read. And she's worked with thousands and thousands of people in a psychotherapy setting for years and years and years. She said, and she comes back to like the things that we're telling ourselves give us dis-ease, and so that you can heal them by using affirmations to do the opposite of what you've been telling yourself for years. She said, no exceptions. Every single person at the base level at some point had the belief that they were carrying around that they're not good enough. And that so much that's wrong with the world, well, wrong, but that could use adjustment in the world comes from the fact that as individuals, we all go around being authorities in our work or in our lives or in our churches, but at the end of the day, a lot of us maybe feel like because someone told us when we were small and we kept telling ourselves that we weren't good enough. But I don't think that's what God or Jesus was trying to tell us. I think he died for our sins because we are good enough, and we need to believe that about ourselves. Because only then can we believe that about our neighbors or our strangers or, you know, the homeless person on down the road. Only then can we act in those ways when we can hold that within ourselves first. So I know that this was quite a tangent. I never know where these talks are going, but I hope this was a good one. But if I can leave you with anything, I hope y'all are saying nice things to yourself. And if you're not, I hope that you're aware of that. And I hope maybe you can start countering them today.
Still got 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll keep going. I never want to do it too long, you know.
I'd like to hear you expand a little
Please.
bit on, I mean, we'll have discussion time.
Yeah, but
You've hit.
I like direction. Some several different points.
It's weird because it's almost like your talk has been for me today.
For me. It's been for me.
All right, no funny girls.
A long time ago, I read that book, Conversation with God.
Yes. The third
And
one's the best.
I don't know if I've read more than the first one. I
Yeah.
can't remember now.
The first one's okay.
But I as a self-proclaimed atheist, I felt a little hesitant going into that book.
Yeah.
And I read it with surprise
Mm-hmm.
because, as kind of a spoiler for anybody who hasn't read it, it turns out to be more of an introspection of the guy having a conversation with himself and finding God in himself. And I don't know if you want to expand a little bit more on that topic, but I mean, for me, your talk today has made me question my status as an atheist, because maybe I've just been defining God wrong.
Exactly. In human terms, in English terms, no less.
Sorry.
Just say that we can, please, no, this is what I'm talking about. It's good, please. A physical release. To say that we've been putting it in limited terms, because so no wonder we would get angry at a patriarchal, man in the sky who tells us we're going to hell if we're bad. Like, of course, that's a limited view of something that's supposed to be everything. Something that's supposed to be so, and it makes sense. And so when the first time I heard that it made so much sense to me that like, oh, that makes sense why God's omnipotent, because he's literally everything, so he's literally everywhere all at once. Oh, that never made sense to me before. How can God be everywhere at once? Well, only if he is literally everything, then it makes total sense. And it validates, every individual we come in contact with, for better or for worse, is a piece of that puzzle. Like a gem or something, like all part of a whole, but each different facets. And so then that makes me realize that there is literally every kind of person that could existing right now. The good, the bad, the middle, everybody. Because that would be God too, is all of it. I was going to get a little Catholicist, but I'm going to save that one, to say that even when I got introduced to conversations with God, I wasn't ready for it. And just because it had the word God in the title, I wasn't willing to accept it. And I remember my friend was really into it. And he kept being like, will you let me lend you this book? And I was like, no. And so I remember one day I was in the park and I was having a really depressed day and I was just laying in the field looking at the sky just crying. And he came and sat next to me. And this had probably been like the 20th time he'd asked me, and he goes, will you finally let me read you some of this book? I was like, fine. I was so mad about it. But sure enough, the part that he read me, I wasn't ready to hear. But it was that one part, and I think it was the third book, that was like, can you understand that life itself was like, existence and consciousness? Isn't that a miracle enough for you? We took it for granted because we came here and we had consciousness and we existed and we were a part of it. So we're like, whatever, that's life. He said, can you understand that life itself, what a complex, how can that not be a gift from God? Isn't that all the proof you would need? The fact that you can think these things and we can have these conversations with words that someone created that we can put in our heads to tell you? Is that not enough to say that God is everything and everywhere? Like, why wouldn't you? That God, I think that what he was saying is, because I maybe extrapolated, it's been a year or so since I've read it, but I think he was saying that, like, consciousness is God, that like, life is God, but that we are a part of it, so of course we would take it as just a piece of what's going on here, but that itself is enough of a miracle to say, well, isn't there more than going on? Because I used to think that we were all just like a cosmic fluke, that like, happened to all have life here, and that's a very nihilist view. And but when I opened my perception to the fact that God could be literally everything, makes the world a lot more of a beautiful place, and just the intricacies of a flower blooming out of the ground, or a child learning something, or the idea that like the things that we have in our world though right now are our collective manifestation. The idea that the law of attraction is that it's a law like gravity is a law. It's going to work whether you believe in it or not, or whether you know how to identify it or not. And of course it's a theory, as is everything, literally. But the idea of the law of attraction is that since we are a vibrational being, since we can all agree, nothing's really solid, it's just one of those science things that like everything's just moving fast enough to be perceived as, a solid table so we don't fall through the floor, but that we are all moving and our cells are dying and being reborn all the time. So we are fluid things that feel solid but aren't really. That creates a vibration, obviously, because it has movement, so it would have, a vibration to it. And that the idea of a law of attraction is that the universe is just not desperately, but is in its nature trying to match frequencies. It's not a thought process. It's not a good or bad. It's literally a physics thing of like attracts like. And so that's the idea of like what we think becomes our reality, because your thoughts are real. And so when you put a thought out there, the universe is trying, or God or whatever, is trying to match that vibration. So if you think, the world's against you, you're going to get more things. The universe doesn't know that's a bad thing. It just says, okay, here you go. More things to prove your beliefs are true. In that vein, that makes you realize that everybody's individual truth would end up equating the one truth. And that's another topic that I was actually really going to talk about, but I didn't end up talking about that really at all. That the idea of manifestation, and that's a loaded word, so we can just say attraction or whatever, that the way the world is our collective manifestation, that we all on some subconscious level, what we see in the world is the average of what everybody wanted. So if you knew what you wanted, and you knew how to ask yourself and thereby vibrate into the universe what you wanted, on an individual level, then maybe globally we can start having a better collective manifestation. I believe that it's that easy / super hard, because how do you get any individual to do something they don't want to do? By convincing them it's in their best interest to evaluate the processes that are happening in our... I mean, you think like 1,000 thoughts, that can't be right. More than 1,000 thoughts a day. A lot of thoughts during a day. Just tune into one of them to realize what you're thinking, and then if the theories are right about law of attraction, then to understand that the things you're thinking are the things that you're setting up in your life to experience, see how that's playing out, and maybe you realize what it is that you're... For me, it made me realize, once I realized that, I had to realize that I didn't even know what I wanted. So then I had to do some soul searching to figure out what I wanted. And then I only did that by figuring out all the things that I didn't want. So it was a roundabout way to get there, and I'm still doing it. But I think that I have a lot firmer grasp on it. So definitely, I encourage everyone to find their own truths. That anybody that tells you anything is only just words from their experience trying to tell you their beliefs. And I believe that anybody who tells you that they know the truth and tries to hand it off to you like a cake is just playing to their own ego. So I encourage you to find what works for you. And like the conversations to God just came to me, was forced into my lap. Did not have a choice. Did not go, oh, let me go to the God section and see what books they have. So trust that when you start that path, that the tools that you need will present themselves to you. But to be able to... The awareness is a really important key, because not only do we need to be aware of the things that we're thinking and the way that we're setting ourselves up to receive things, but then to be aware of the things that are presenting themselves to us, the synchronicities. I'll leave with I love telling people this, because I've been called weird my whole life, and I have taken it back as a word. And it actually comes from an old Celtic word, called W-Y-R-D. And the word meant, in the tapestry of life that we're like weaving together, like each being a thread or a piece of string, and our collective existence being a beautiful tapestry, the point in space and time where like two of those threads cross was called a weird. So it'd be like, oh, it's so weird that we're meeting here, because it was... So I try to so those are the synchronicities, don't look those over when you go, oh, I was thinking about that, and then here it is. One of the greatest, I'm so glad I came to this, one of the greatest things you can do to help yourself on that path is to have, to be grateful, to give thanks. A lot of the theology about the law of attraction is that the fake it till you make it, is that you have to step into the feeling of already having the things that you want to have, or already being the way you want to be. And to do that, it's a real quick trick, is to be grateful. To feel the feelings of gratefulness, along with thinking about, what you'd like, or where you'd like, or who you'd like. To be grateful like you already have it, like you're already there. Like you already know the things that you need to know. To be able to just sit. I know it's a trick, and I know it feels weird, but to just sit for a second and go, oh, I wanted that job, or I wanted that partner, or I wanted that sense of peace, and to feel what it feels like to already have it, and then to be so great. Oh, I'm so thankful for having that. And then move on, go about the rest of your day. You don't have to give it a second thought. You don't have to think about it all the time. The place that we can affect change is only ever in the present moment. That's the edge of an endless wave that we're riding on. That's the point of manifestation. That's the point the only point, because I've, as a person who dealt with depression when I was younger, was constantly living in the past or the future, being in the present, but not in the present. I remember one time my brain was just like, come back, time traveler, you're not even here. And I was like, oh, I am time traveling, aren't I? Because I was thinking 10 years ago, getting all worked up about something that happened 10 years ago. The present moment is really important for that path of manifestation. To just take a moment, to take a breath and go, okay, let me be aware of what I'm thinking. If I need to, adjust. Be grateful for everything I have and where I'm at, and then go about your day. It's as easy as that. You don't have to like be doing it all the time. So just take any present moment, even once a day. To take one thought and change it for the positive. To take one moment and be aware and present in it, and to use it as every new now, like what a gift, you know? So just use one of those a day to do something, even if it's phooey. I believe that beliefs perpetuate themselves. So even if you don't believe it first, that's why it's called fake it till you make it. Because eventually you make it, and eventually it's a belief and a truth, and you're standing at a podium telling other people to believe it too. So does that answer your question? I think that's
Thank
good.
you, Tiffany.
Thank you very much.